Hopkins. I work for 7 News DC here in Washington, DC. It is so great to have all of you here joining us this evening for tonight's event. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight for Dialogue with Doctors Seeking Serenity, How to Cope When Dealing with Fibroids. We want you to listen and engage in our event. You can also go to the chat on the side of your Zoom and ask us questions, but we do ask that you keep those kind of vague. These doctors don't know your specific story, so they can't speak to you directly, but you can ask vague questions that they can answer and everyone can gain knowledge from. Now, we do have 3 really great panelists for you tonight. I want to take a moment to tell you about them. First, we have Tori Dixon. She is a therapist. She's a professional counselor specializing in providing compassionate and graceful guidance for those navigating various aspects of life. Now, she specializes in grief and loss, practicing from the belief that any barrier to mental wellness is ultimately attributed to some sense of loss. And whatever that loss, Tori believes that grace and space to acknowledge and properly grieve loss is the first step on the road to true healing and emotional and mental wholeness. Now, she has adopted a theoretically sound, culturally competent, and faith-based approach that focuses on engaging and meeting you where you are on your journey. Tori has built her life on serving others. Graceful Journey Counseling epitomizes service by placing emphasis on trust, authenticity, compassion, wise and pragmatic counsel, professionalism, and of course, grace. We also have Dr. Cindy Duke joining us later on tonight. She is an OBGYN, a reproductive endocrinologist, and infertility specialist. She also has international telemedicine on her resume. She's also a virologist based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, Dr. Duke is the physician, founder, and medical director and lab director of the Nevada Fertility Institute in Las Vegas, Nevada. She's a PhD trained, award-winning virologist whose research interests centered on the interplay of viruses with the human immune system. Dr. Duke is also a clinical assistant professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas School of Medicine, where she plays a role in resident and medical student education. Dr. Duke also conducts research focused on the intersection of healthcare delivery with technology and how that can be used to close gaps in patients' ability to access care. Dr. Duke is also a telemedicine expert who started a virtual women's health clinic in the Caribbean back in 2016. And finally, we have our patient advocate for tonight, Tara Koran. She is a diversity and inclusion professional working at a tech company in the Bay Area, California. She has been on her own personal journey of overcoming fibroids since 2017 and is an advocate for women's health. She believes that women should no longer suffer in silence and encourages conversations such as the one that we are having tonight during Fibroids Awareness Month, this month of July. Now, we have everyone's social media handles placed in the chat. It just pop up. I encourage you to follow them. Also follow the White Dress Project, We Can Wear White. They're the ones putting on this event for tonight. They have great inspiration, motivation, tips on their social media. And as I always say, it is absolutely free and a great source of information for you. Now, as I just mentioned, July is Fibroid Awareness Month, and there is a host of events that the White Dress Project is hosting for you the rest of the month, and we'll have those for you at the end of tonight's program. So of course, stay tuned. Again, thank you for joining us, and let's get started. I want to begin with our patient advocate, Tara. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. Go ahead and briefly tell us your story of dealing with fibroids since 2017.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mine started out as just spotting in between periods. And then through an ultrasound, a doctor was like, hey, we think you have polyps or fibroids or something. So that was scary just to even hear that, because I had always had regular cycles, never really had much trouble. I was an athlete in high school, so my periods were always on time, 7 days, normal. Fast forward, and we found out that I indeed had fibroids, but we weren't sure how many. And so I went through a hysteroscopy in 2018, which is just going up through the cervix, removing one fibroid. And then shortly after that, it was around 6 months later, I actually started having excruciating pain during my cycles, really huge blood clots, like the size of my fist. And it was just alarming. So I tried different methods of birth control. My body rejected that. And then through another ultrasound and another MRI, we found out that I had at least 10 fibroids. So I was thankful and very appreciative that last May, actually, even with the pandemic, I was able to have an abdominal laparoscopic myomectomy. And that actually removed 14 fibroids, which was a shocker to me, as I didn't know that I had that many. But yeah, I guess, through all of that, I was anemic, severely anemic, losing a lot of blood. And it was just hard to navigate a day to day and go to work every day, preparing, how am I going to make it through the day with losing so much blood?
We often talk about the physical effects of fibroids and how it affects your quality of life and your periods and the length of your periods and how heavy they are. The
Yeah.
anemia, as you mentioned, just being tired. And as women, we still have a ton of things to do on a day-to-day basis. But can you also kind of expand on how it affected you mentally?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm actually a very social person. And through the year before I got my surgery in 2019, having to show up at work every day was a struggle. I would, people would want to invite me out to lunch and I'd be like, oh no, I can't go. I had to rush to the bathroom and change, my pad and my tampons and things. And I was going through ultra super tampons and an overnight pad on like a 30-minute basis, right? And so that was affecting my quality of life at work. And then on a personal level, it affected my relationship. There were days, months where my period lasted for like 40 days nonstop, consistently bleeding, heavily bleeding. It affected my personal life as far as friends wanting to invite me out places. And, I was always thinking, well, is there a bathroom nearby? Will there be a bathroom? Like always trying to plan ahead of the time. And I even say to my friends now, I kind of isolated myself prior to the pandemic. I opted out of a lot of social gatherings and I really felt alone. Sure, my friends, being girls and being women, they had their cycles too, they had their periods, but no one really understood the magnitude and how painful the cramping was and how I was just always bloated, always tired, just all of that. The isolation for me, I think, took the largest toll. And just feeling misunderstood oftentimes and having to also be extremely exhausted, but still having to advocate for myself and navigate the healthcare system, right? Because that's a whole other thing as well that can take a toll on your mental.
Right. Isolation, I think, is the key to what you're saying. It's one of the things that I think a lot of women endure and maybe don't have the exact word for it, but I think isolation is the key word. Did you also feel like you were the only person that you knew who had fibroids? You've never heard of it before?
Yeah, and now the crazy thing is, I talk a lot. Like I am such an open person, and so I started. It got to the point where we would have team lunch meetings and things like that. So I had to tell my manager, hey, like this is what's going on with me, and then she let me know, what, I've actually had a hysterectomy from fibroids. And I started meeting. The more I would talk to people and openly have those conversations, the more I would find out, oh wait, no, I have fibroids too. Or you know what, my aunt had fibroids and I didn't realize that this is the toll it takes on you. And so since then, for me, it's been super, super important to have conversations and really elevate that, because I think there's so much stigma around even talking about periods, right? And shame behind that. And so when you're having periods that can last a month or 2 months long, you don't know how to talk about it and you just feel like you're so alone. So that would be the hardest thing, I think. That the physical is one part, you already feel exhausted, but that mental emotional toll that it takes on your body, it's like your body is attacking you and fighting you when you just want to exist and survive, right?
Absolutely. You bring up so many key points, just the logistics of you going out and doing something so simple as happy hour or
Yeah.
dinner. And is there a bathroom? And I have to pack a big purse. I can't carry a cute clutch because I need pads and tampons. And then just feeling like you're so alone. I found out I had fibroids and I told my mom, and then she said, oh, me too. I had never heard of this from her before. I want to bring in Tori, the therapist. Tori, thank you so much for your time tonight and sharing your expertise and insight. When you hear Tiara talk, do you hear a lot of this from your patients, similar things?
Absolutely, particularly when it comes to those feelings of being isolated and that no one really understands what you're going through. And mainly what I like to have conversations about, as you said earlier, that I specialize in grief and loss. And oftentimes we don't associate that we have to have a grieving process for all the things that we lose during our time when fibroids has, as she said, kind of taken over your life. And now you're having to create these spaces around this medical condition that is so isolating and even oftentimes embarrassing, because you don't want to talk about it. And so that isolation then leads to this space of depression and anxiety. And when we talk about what we grieve, someone mentioned in the chat that we grieve the loss of our income, we grieve the loss of our relationships, we grieve the loss of the freedom to be able to move about our day as we normally would if we did not have to make all of these concessions for this illness that we can't really speak about and we really can't talk about. So yes, I have these conversations all the time, and particularly saying we have to allow space for grief to happen so that then peace can come in and reside. Oftentimes I say grief shared is grief diminished. So when we have these conversations and when we have these forums such as this, it gives us an opportunity to share our spaces with other women so that then we can now allow peace to reside in those places. One, I'm not alone. This is not an isolated incident. I'm not by myself. And although we're not having poignant and open conversations about it, it doesn't mean that I'm the only person that's suffering from and experiencing what happens to a life that has been forecast by fibroids.
Grief shared is grief diminished.
Absolutely.
Okay, I
Absolutely.
love that. I'm putting that in the back of my brain to remember that. And that's why it's so key that we talk about things out loud. I want to ask you also, you know, I know a lot of women who deal with fibroids have to go from doctor to doctor, and you know, you go down the Google search trap and it's a vortex of misinformation and too much information. How does that play a role in women's mental health when they're dealing with fibroids as well?
I mean, I think it's really important because the first thing that we do is we want to ensure that what we're feeling is not a figment of our imagination, especially when we go to doctors and we have a hard time getting them to hear us and to listen to us and to actually open up the conversation to hear how we are experiencing our bodies as opposed to being told what our bodies are supposed to be experiencing. So I speak to a lot of women, and the first thing that they say, I almost feel gaslighted in the industry because I'm telling you that I'm having this pain. I'm telling you that these periods are going longer and they're more uncomfortable the longer that they go. And you're telling me that it's just a matter of you getting birth control, or maybe we'll do this part of treatment, but we won't do this one. Oh, we'll do a vaginal ultrasound, but we won't do an MRI because we don't think it's that bad. We think that maybe you're putting on, right? And we have to understand that oftentimes in the medical profession, particularly for African Americans, there's just a history of misinformation about the pain level and pain tolerance that we should be able to experience in our bodies. So going to your physician and they then saying, okay, well, maybe you should just need to take another ibuprofen. And you're like, I'm at 15 milligrams a day, 1500 milligrams a day, and I can't take any more if I'm going to be functional. To know that your pain is not a figment of your imagination, and that as an advocate for your own self, and I'm going to put this out there, that oftentimes we stay in places too long and we accept pain that we should not. So it lessens our pain receptors, even in our mental and emotional spaces. So oftentimes, even within our own selves, our physical bodies can play that game on us that you should be able to take a little bit more. You should be able to, oh, it's not that bad. You know, your pain tolerance should be a little bit higher. And I would like to say, don't gaslight yourself. And then also don't allow the medical profession to gaslight you as well. Not being seen and feeling as though that there is some level of pain that should come along with your cycles anyway, then now that also gaslights you and make you feel as though what I'm feeling is not real.
Okay, so don't gaslight yourself in terms of your pain tolerance, both physical, emotional, and mental. And don't let any medical professional gaslight you for your pain tolerance either.
Absolutely. Again, I'm going to point to this particular forum because this is where information on doctors in your area can be found. There are medical professionals that work in this particular on this particular platform that can refer you to other doctors in your area, no matter where you are in the country. They have referrals and they have doctors who will listen to you, doctors who will hear you, doctors who will ask you from a holistic standpoint, how is your periods impacting your sex life? How is your periods impacting the way that you work? All of that is going to be important if you're going to get the proper diagnosis and prognosis for what's going on with you. And they may even say, how is it impacting your mental health and wellness? If you are experiencing bouts of depression, if you are experiencing bouts of anxiety, and you know that this has to do specifically with all of the maneuvering that you have to do in terms of your fibroid and your fibroid treatment, then that means that we have to start to be a little bit more aggressive in what we do to take care of the issue.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you, when we are dealing with this, oftentimes alone and isolated, how do you tell your patients to ask for help or ask for that support from those who are closest to you? Because, your friends are asking you, hey, let's go here, let's go there. Maybe you're not up to it. And then it's, well, what's your problem? How do you go about navigating your friendships and your relationships, especially with your partner, in terms of, look, it's not you, it is me, but I need your support.
Yeah, I will tell you that oftentimes I find that asking for help can be one of the most difficult things that all of us deal with, because when we ask for help, it automatically puts us in a space where we are vulnerable. The vulnerability that comes along with having this expression about what it looks like to be able to say, it's my period, showing up as authentically as you can is probably one of the things that I want to say. And then saying, if I'm hurting, I'm hurting. And this is why I'm hurting. This is the reason why I'm having these symptoms. This is why I can't go out. This is why I'm having a hard time. And then allowing yourself that level of vulnerability. I will tell you that oftentimes it's in our most deepest places and our most difficult avenues that we take in our lives where we really can see where our friendships and our relationships are. So be really careful in your circles when your no is met with a point of contention. And that's no on anything. No, I can't make it. No, I don't like that. No, I don't want to do that. Just be really mindful of the responses that you get when your answer is a no. And then that lets you know where you can show up authentically in these spaces to ask for help.
Absolutely. Tia, I want to bring you back into the conversation and just ask you, you were able to identify the isolation that you've experienced. Is that something that you identified in hindsight after the fact, or when you were in it, were you able to say, I am depressed, I have anxiety, I feel isolated? What was kind of your journey in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say having the language came after, looking back on things, but while you're in there in the moment, again, there's that physical exhaustion that I think overrides a lot of it, right? And then, for example, in my relationship specifically with my partner, there were things that I just had to say to him, hey, I can't do this today because I'd rather just sleep. I'd have to show up at work through Monday through Friday and show up and get work done. And I'm turning all of the energy I have on at work. That's how some of my personal relationships suffered. And as Dr. Tori was mentioning, I think it was eloquently said, I was fortunate enough to have that support. So in times when I did feel extreme sadness or frustration, because I had been to the emergency room 5 times in a 2-week span, right? I had that support system, whether it's friends, who some of them are on this Zoom right now. So thank you for showing up. And also through, my mom, through my partner being there and kind of just understanding. There would be days where I would just cry because the cramps hurt and I just kept cramping. And no matter what I did, there were just going to be cramps and there was just going to be these huge blood clots. And I just got so sick of it. Right. And then looking back, I realized, not only was there depression and anxiety, especially in public settings, it was almost like this other level of like paranoia as well. Like, when I would have to be at a work conference or an all-day meeting for work, I would think like, okay, I need to bring a backup pair of pants, a backup pair of underwear. If I leak, what's my exit strategy going to be? You know, like, how can I minimize the potential embarrassment and humiliation of what's to come, right? And, you know, for me, it was very important as well to still show up for my friends, right? I had a great friend that got married the same year that I was struggling with fibroids, and I was in her wedding. I was a bridesmaid, and, you know, I'm thinking the whole time, do I have enough pads, right? And so it wasn't until I looked back on my journey when I was like, wow, I should have been a little more gentle with myself, which is still an area that I'm working on, but it was also important for me, the type of person I am, to still push forward, but also recognize the days when I needed to just stay home and sleep because I'm exhausted and I'm anemic and I'm losing too much blood, right? And trying to figure that out. But yeah, I didn't have the language until after the fact, but I would definitely encourage whoever is listening and feels like they're feeling hopeless, just know that you are gonna make it through. You know, I know it doesn't feel like that. For me, I was on a journey for a really long time and there was just no hope. It felt like I was hopeless, you know, and I was just like, when is my body gonna stop fighting me? I'm trying to take care of my body. And just know, do everything within your power to be gentle with yourself and give yourself that grace. If you need a break, if you can't do things, that's okay. And make sure you have the people around you that communicate that it's okay for you to take that time for yourself. Like, you have to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, especially when you're dealing with fibroids.
I heard a lot of key words there, Tori, you know, the isolation, the sadness, the paranoia. And then also, I think that, you know, women in general, we are way too hard on ourselves. And you said it, Tiara, give yourself grace. Tori, I want to ask you, what would you say, you know, when you're in the thick of things and it is hard to identify and verbalize and articulate, I am depressed? What are the signs that people should be aware of? What are the feelings people should be aware of? And then also speak to the fact that you shouldn't be ashamed that you're feeling these emotions.
Give yourself room to feel. Give yourself permission to feel. I know we live in, especially since our bout with the pandemic, we live in a space now where social media has become the, you know, major space where we're getting a lot of our information, either about ourselves or about other people. And we want to present this space where we are always happy, and nobody's always happy. Nobody is getting it right all the time. Everything is not working good for everybody all the time. So I think allowing us to even have a space where we say things are not working okay for me and being okay with that. Because once you kind of take the pressure off of this life having to be perfect, then it allows you to have these spaces where you, if you are experiencing extreme sadness or if you are experiencing depression, then it's not so alarming, because we have this thing that we are kind of working through that we call toxic positivity, where everything has to be positive all the time and you have to be happy all the time. And that is anxiety driven as well. When you know internally I'm suffering with this pain, internally I'm not happy, internally, and everybody says, well, everything outside of you looks okay, but then what's going on inside of me is presenting some issues. I posted some things in the chat for some things to monitor when we talk about being sad and being depressed. And I will say that even in the grieving process, one of the stages of grief is depression. Oftentimes, when you are experiencing depression that may have to do with a medical issue, the depression that you're feeling is targeted toward that particular thing. So this is going to be what delineates a depressed mood because of an incident that's occurring from overall generalized major depressive disorder. So if you have major depressive disorder, you're going to be depressed about everything. But if this is a specific thing that is causing feelings of depression, some of the things that you want to look at is just monitoring your appetite. And I know some of these things are going to be correlated to what happens when you are actually experiencing those cramps and those fibroids. It's going to alter your eating habits and your sleeping habits. As Sierra spoke about her energy being really low and wanting to be tired. But if you're eating too much or too little, if you are sleeping too much or too little, if you are having difficulties concentrating, if you're having difficulties transitioning from one task to the next, if you find that there are a lot of things going undone, and sometimes you may feel like, man, do I have ADHD or do I have ADD because I can't concentrate and I can't focus? And then you know that this thing now has become so pervasive that it is now carrying an emotional weight or burden with it. Then you may want to go ahead and say, you know what, I may be experiencing some depression as it relates to this particular thing, but also keep in mind that if this particular incident can also trigger maybe some childhood or some early feelings of depression that you may have been having as well. So this is going to exacerbate those symptoms. There's more spaces of sadness and depressed mood, and you can't just kind of get out of it. Sometimes you feel like you're kind of in a dark hole and you're always kind of feeling like you have to dig your way out of this space. Then this is going to be a good time to go and ask for help and talk to a mental health professional.
Tori, I want to ask you another question. We've got some really good discussion happening here in the chat regarding grieving the fact that your body is not working with you. I know when I had fibroids, it was like, why me? Why is this happening? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? And then, the discussion in the chat is, how about infertility? And why is my body turning against me? And, you have your hopes and dreams, and it's just another level of disappointment. How does one deal with that?
That is such a really good question because as a woman, so much of our womanhood and womanness is defined by our ability to be fertile and to be able to reproduce, right? And so whenever we have issues with our body, and again, our body is fighting against us, it's not only fighting against us from a medical standpoint, but even from a mental and femininity standpoint, because who am I without my reproductive system working in the way that I had expected or anticipated it? And because we're not having much open conversation about the fact that every woman is not as fertile as other women. As you get older, your fertility level changes. That some women are born with genetic concerns with fertility that has nothing to do with fibroids or endometriosis or any other illness, but it's just genetically that they can't have children. We don't talk about how we are defining our feminine selves and womanness outside of our ability to produce. So if we have issues with production and then we have our bodies that's working against us, oftentimes we have to not see ourselves as the enemy and realize that the things that we are trying to control, particularly in our reproductive systems, we cannot control. None of us can control whether or not we are going to be able to have fibroids or not have fibroids. We cannot control whether or not we're going to be able to have children or if we're not going to have children. There are going to be some things about the way that our anatomy is set up that is completely outside of our control. And I think once we get to that place where we understand that our fertility is not in our control, whether we are participating in sexual activities that will lead to us having a child, or we're not participating, or our bodies are presenting symptoms with fibroids and other reproductive concerns, we are not in control. When we decide that we can relinquish the control of what our bodies are doing or not doing, and in many ways sever that from our level of femininity, I think that's what's going to help us to better understand how to deal with the emotional and the mental spaces that come along with that.
More of the discussion in the chat is about being able to have a child biologically yourself, and the disappointment when that might not be a possibility or an option. Do you find that society puts so much pressure on women? This is your job. This is what you do. You had one job. And so it just, even that aspect adds another layer of guilt, shame, really just trauma.
Absolutely. The more we talk about this, you guys, I think we're all old enough to remember the Oprah effect, right? One of the biggest things that was towering over her career and her success was why she was never a mother. And the question came up over and over and over again for her. And she basically said that who I am and my purpose in my life is not attached to my ability to reproduce or to give to another person, even if that other person happens to be my child. And so I am learning to flow within and to live within the purpose of what I'm supposed to have. Biological children are great. And one of the things that I tell my women clients who, for whatever reason, cannot bear their own children biologically the way that we traditionally know of it. And I'm going to get to that point where we talk about our ideal life versus the reality of what we have. And the reason that much of our disappointment is coming, and that our expectation and the ideal that we have for our life is so far from the reality of what we are experiencing. And the way that we close that gap and we lessen that space of disappointment is by allowing that ideal to reach the point of our reality so that we can enjoy the space that we have ultimately in whatever that looks like. Now, technology and medicine has given us so many other options that we can take in order to have children. We can have our eggs be used and fertilized, and we can have someone to carry for us. There are so many ways that you can still have a child that is biologically connected to you. And now we have to get comfortable with grieving, because our society never wants to deal with loss. And even if you choose some alternative way to have a child, you are going to grieve the loss of having that personal experience of watching your belly grow and rubbing the baby bump and doing the maternity shoot with the cloth that's everywhere, and everybody getting to rub the belly. I think we have to listen, grief is the most common emotion that is shared among humanity. We all won't have happiness, but all of us at some point will experience grief. And when we get comfortable with understanding loss and understanding that loss is not an isolated incident, that you and I can experience loss, but some of us will never experience having $1 million in our account. Some of us will never experience having six figures. Some of us will never experience riding in a Maybach. Some of us will never go to the Maldives. We may never experience the epitome of what the joys of life have for us, but all of us have experienced loss. And loss is the emotional space that connects our humanity, that says you are not going through anything, even though that thing may not be exactly my thing, but I know what it's like to lose. And when we come together and stop, the anthem is all we do is win, win, win. No, we lose, and it's okay to have a loss, and it's okay to acknowledge it, and it's okay to grieve it.
Preach, Tori, preach, girl. I just feel like you are giving us all a therapy session tonight, and it is so needed because this is such a difficult topic and it's so hard to share and talk about. And you're right, it comes from a place of vulnerability, and you just have to open and let it out. I just so appreciate everything that you are saying. And honestly,
and there is a light.
yeah.
Let me tell you that there is a light, that darkness will not prevail. It will not stop your purpose. It will not stop the plan that is destined for your life. Let me tell you that no matter what your belief is, if you believe that God has a plan for your life, know that this was included in that plan, and that He's not somewhere up there with whiteout or Mr. Clean Magic Eraser or some eraser to erase it out because, oh my God, I did not know this was going to happen. No, He knew, but we didn't. And now we are coming to a place where what we did not know is coming into the knowledge and the fruition of what we do know through our experiences, and understanding and knowing that there is nothing that's going to happen in your life or mine that we have not been equipped to handle. So if it's fibroids, if it's infertility, if it's having our children via unconventional ways, there is nothing that is happening in your life that is unknown to the Creator, who has created you with divine purpose, with divine healing. Your body is going to heal itself emotionally, spiritually. It's going to heal itself. There's nothing happening to you in this moment that He is not aware of. And just know that the divine, when you know that, okay, something is going on with my body, it's because you're now catching up to the part of the story that you may not have had any knowledge about. But guess what? There is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. If it's not good, it's not finished. because we know that all things are working together for our good because we love him and because we are called according to his purpose. So if at the end, the equation does not have good on the end, you know it's not finished. So don't give up. You just keep going.
Oh, MG. If it's not good, it is not finished.
It's not finished.
How many gems are you going to drop on us tonight?
Well,
I mean, that is so good. I just wish that when I was going through my journey, I had your voice in my head, because, it is one of those things where you do cry out to God. Why are you doing this to me? I have all of these plans. You know what they are. I am praying to you that this won't be this way. And yet here we are in the valley, and I'm surrounded by fibroids and medicine and science. And, you spoke to so many things that I can relate to. I had to use IVF, and I had a whole mental breakdown over, should I go the scientific route? Maybe God doesn't intend for me to have kids. Am I doing this wrong? Am I not on his timeline? It's all the thoughts and things that go through your mind that can really kind of drive you to a place of darkness. Tiara, I want to ask you, when you're going through your journey and when you hear the diagnosis and when you're trying to figure out, first it's a couple of fibroids and it's 10, then it's 14. What was your conversation with your partner?
Yeah, I think what I've learned, and what I think is ironic, is when you're growing up as a young girl, right? They want you to be on birth control. It's like, don't have a baby too young. You don't want to have a baby. And then all of a sudden, right, because you've been trying to not have a baby, and then you want to have a baby. And then exactly that, you're questioning God, you're questioning, why is this happening to me? What does this mean for my womb? What does this mean for my uterus? Can I even keep my uterus, right? And I think for me, it was very important, number one, to keep my uterus, because I feel doctors will push hysterectomies on us. And that was just not acceptable for me. And also doctors looked at me and they were like, well, you're still young. You haven't had a child yet. You want to preserve your uterus, don't you? And, in the days when I was bleeding and cramping so bad, there were days where I was like, you know what? F it. I will just get a hysterectomy if I don't have to go through this, right? So it's those wave of emotions too. And then I think when I would have those discussions with my partner, right, and he already has a child from a previous relationship, which I also want to say is, there's other ways to be a mom too. You can be a stepmom, you can be a role model, you can adopt, there's lots of different ways to be a mom that I had to kind of shift my own mindset into thinking. But when it came to my fertility specifically, there's still hope for me. And the laparoscopic route is more minimal invasive. So it's not, like a cesarean cut, or it's not going to be as traumatic to the body. But it did kind of put some pressure on the relationship, and it did put pressure on myself as a woman. Because I always took it as, if it's meant to be, God will bless me with a baby, right? Or, I'm such a go with the flow type of person where, I started getting intimidated when I would be in these doctor appointments and they'd be like, well, what's your plan? Like, do you want to have a baby? And when you want to have a baby, we're going to say, let's take these fibroids out. And then you should probably think about having a baby in the next year or the next, and that was a lot of messages being thrown at me. Right. And then just having that additional pressure and having those tough conversations in my relationship at the time, it was difficult, right? Because on one end, you just want to feel better. You just want to stop bleeding. And then on the other end, you want to try to protect your body and preserve your uterus and, try to maintain as much as you can, especially if you're young. I saw someone in the chat said they're 22. And I just want you to know that this does not mean that you can never, ever have children. It just means that there might be a different way to have children, or you might just have to pick a procedure that you're more comfortable with where you can maintain your uterus. It's all about what you're most comfortable with. And so my partner and I were able to navigate those conversations, just having open, honest communication, right? I think that's number one. If you're in a relationship, you have to be with a partner who's understanding where you are physically, understanding that, hey, we can't have sex right now. You're going to have to get over it, right? And being okay with that, right? And then what's our plan if we do want to have children, right? And I think, choosing the right people to have children with is also something to think about, not just wanting to hurry up and have children before it's too late because you're worried about fibroids, right? I think you have to just pray on it. You know, therapist Tori, she's dropping all of these gems, and there's times where you're questioning, why me, why me? But just know that the journey you're on is going to make you stronger. You're going to understand, hey, maybe I'm supposed to be taking better care of my body. Maybe I should be watching what I'm eating. Maybe I should be watching how I'm exercising. There were a lot of things that I changed lifestyle wise to help my body be better to me. And so hopefully that answered your question. It's just don't let outside factors, external factors, whether that's doctors, a relationship, parents, if you're married and you get that question, hey, when are you guys having kids? Like, there's just so many external pressure on women to conceive. And I think we have to start to just shift our own mindsets that your one purpose in life as a woman is not to bear children, right? Like, that's not it. It might be what society tells us, but you can have way more purpose in a much driven, purposeful life with or without children. And it's not always just about solely having a baby.
Absolutely. Tori, I want to bring you back in here because Tiara just touched on so many key points there, especially the point that it's not our sole job in our womanhood journey to bear children. When you're having these heavy conversations with a partner or a spouse, you know, at what point do you just say, I need to preserve my own mental health, emotional health, physical health, and cut my losses with this person? That's another level of grief.
Absolutely. I was saying as she was speaking that peace is an inside job, and everything around us should be pointing us to that area. I know a lot of times when we are looking for peaceful spaces, I always say this all the time, that every other gift can be kind of mimicked. If you're looking for joy, it can be mimicked with happiness. If you're looking for love, it can be mimicked with lust. But if you're looking for peace, there really is no mimic for peace. Peace is something that's an inside job, and everything within you will know whether or not these relationships are pointing to your places of peace or if they are creating more destructive places than they need to. I think when we show up authentically and when we are aware of our own bodies ourselves, then we are better aware of having these conversations with our partners and even with our spouses about what that looks like. I remember speaking with a client once who herself was dealing with some fibroid concerns, and she's not able to conceive. And she said, well, when I got married, we did not know that this was my state and my condition. And now that I've married my partner, I feel as though I hoodwinked or bamboozled them because I didn't know what was going on. And then I wasn't able to give them that information. And just having to help her work through not feeling guilty for not knowing what her body was doing, and that she would not have known, because oftentimes you can have fibroids and they don't present themselves until much later on. It can be, you can have a fibroid that can be there for years and there's never any symptomatology that will point to the fact that you have this fibroid. And so as I was helping her walk through that, one thing I will say though is being sure that we do have a really good connection. I'm going to give you a personal story. I turned 43 last year, and my girlfriend, who is a OBGYN, and she loves me so much, she was like, hey girl, you need to go to a fertility specialist and you need to check on your body and see what's going on here. You're 43, you don't have any children. I've never attempted to have a child, so I didn't know if I could or if I couldn't. I assumed that I could, right? Because I've never tried. So let's just see. So I went to a fertility specialist. We did all the tests. We looked at, everything that's going on. Thankfully, things are well. She found a polyp and she was like, we can remove that. And then if you're ready to get pregnant, you can do that. What that did for me was it created a sense of peace for me, because now I can go into whatever partnership I'm going to go into and say, hey, this is where I am. And if we decide to have children, this is what's remaining, this is what's here. And if we decide not to, then that's okay too. As women, I want us to refocus ourselves on finding that space of healing and wholeness for ourselves. So going to do the work and checking your body out just for the sake of your own personal peace. And to realize that if you are in a relationship where fertility is, where this person is not understanding that space, I'm probably going to say that there are other areas, that this is not the main issue, but that there may be other areas in the relationship that is already compromised. And so this may be a point of contention, but it may not be the root of the problem. It can be a point of contention, but not necessarily the root of the problem.
You know, Tori, one thing I want to talk to you about, and this is just something personally that I dealt with and I still sometimes deal with, it's being jealous of other women who were able to, you know, oh, I'm late on my period and pee on a stick, and oh, I'm pregnant, woo, and surprise their husband, and, you know, all of these things. And for us, it was just very scientific. You know, he goes into a room, I have surgery, you know, you put it together in a petri dish and get it tested to make sure there's nothing wrong with the embryos. And then they put it in you. And I mean, you just know every single step of the way. I knew the gender of my children. So nothing was a surprise. And, you know, we see all of these idyllic stories and movie scenes and Instagram stories and reels of people having the surprise and experiencing the joy of this, what's supposed to be a naturally occurring thing for women. When we don't experience that, when that's not our story, how do you deal with being covetous of people and envious?
Honesty, saying that I'm disappointed that I was robbed. This is a part of the grief, the acknowledgement, right? Sometimes most of us just want to be acknowledged. I feel robbed of my opportunity to have this surprise, to surprise my husband, to have the gender reveal and they blowing up stuff in pink or blue. I'm angry. I'm hurt that things didn't turn out for me the way that I see it turning out for other people, right? And even when we see those cute videos on the gram, there could be a story behind that, because the stigma of having issues with fertility is still a stigma. It's still very real. It's much the same as it is with mental health and wellness, that there is still this stigma that says, especially as Black women, and our images are so overly sexualized, that you should be able to do nothing. If you can't do nothing else as a Black woman, you should be able to have a baby, right? And so nobody really wants to give the story that they did have fertility issues, that this child is the first born child, but the fourth pregnancy. We are not having those conversations because of the embarrassment, that comes along with that. And so just saying to yourself, and even if I love to say to journal, to grab you a journal, because journaling, I like to say, gives your thoughts and emotions a place to rest. And it also gives you an opportunity to sort out what you feel and how you feel. And writing down, I'm angry. Either I'm angry at God, I'm angry at my body, I'm angry that every time I turn around, my girlfriend is having another baby shower. Girl, this the fourth shower. I'm not coming. I'm wet already. We good. No, I don't want to be showered. I'm straight. No, I don't want to play the games. I don't want baby shower meatballs. I can't do it. I'm not able to do that. And as Tanika said in the chat, that there are friendships that have a really hard time understanding that truth and that honesty. And again, I would say we have to be mindful of those spaces. There are some friends that we can't say that to. There are some friends that we just have to hold and bite our tongues. But there are also some of our friends that understand, that really actually hold the news back from us because they know that you've tried this 3 times and it didn't happen for you. And then it happened for me. And so I would say that we find the most authentic of spaces. And sometimes that authenticity resides in the quietness of your journal and how you write things down and write your thoughts and process them and grieve the ideal, grieve what you anticipated versus what you were getting. I'm telling you, going through the steps of grief, that comes with this denial, that comes with the anger, that comes with the bargaining, that comes with the depression, and then comes with the acceptance. The more we learn how to go through those cycles, the better off we're able to come out on the other side, finding some peace with reconciling our ideal with our reality.
Is finding peace the same thing or different than being grateful for what you have? Because I know, when I do talk to people, and I tell them, I wish that I had this, I wish that I had that. They're like, oh, well, you have two kids and you have this. Should I just, yeah, I do have two kids. End of story. Am I allowed to feel those other feelings?
Absolutely. They're yours. There's no wrong feeling to feel. Everything we feel is right. Now, everything we feel shouldn't be our fuel. Yeah. So everything we feel is right.
Okay, say that part about fuel again.
Everything we feel is right. Everything we feel shouldn't be our fuel. That what we feel should not be the driving force. Our feelings should always be the passenger in the seats of the cars of our lives. That our feelings should not be driving us, so that we are not emotional wrecks, and that we are not up one day and down another, and up one day and down another, and everything that we're doing is dictated by a feeling. Our decisions should not be dictated by feelings. Feelings are very temporary. They are real, but they are also temporary. And we don't want a temporary feeling driving the permanence of our life's decisions. So, should you be grateful? Certainly.
Okay.
Should you be able to express that my gratefulness has come because my emotions have been through a grater? I have been grained. I have been pressed. I have been, we love olive oil, but the olives have to be pressed. We love wine, but the grapes have to be pressed. And we're not grateful for that really good sip of red because we don't see the back end, that there was a press and a pressure that has been applied to our lives that then produces a fruit. So yes, I'm grateful for the fruit, but you have to give me an opportunity to acknowledge that there was a press and there has been a pressure to pull me through this process so that I can get the product that I now have, which is gratefulness.
Oh, Tori, you're just like, this is it. I mean, so many gems and just so many affirmations. I think that it's so difficult when you're feeling that disappointment, that shame, that anger. For me, it was really anger, and anger at God specifically. And just all the thoughts like, did I do something in my life? I'm the sinner. I can't have kids. And so I just wish that you were in my head when I was going through this. Tiara, we're running out of time. I'm always running out of time when we do these. Tiara, I want you to kind of just speak to your takeaways from tonight and what you would tell anyone else who is in the thick of it. I always go back to that passage in Psalm, like, I'm in the valley of the shadow of death. It is all around me, but there's a table prepared, and God is with me at that table, even with everything around me. He's right there. So what would you tell people as they're sitting at that table, with God? What would you say to those people and your takeaways from tonight?
Yeah. Tori dropped so many gems. So first, my key takeaway is take care of yourself. As women, this is something I am learning still. I'm sure there's going to be different phases through life where I'm going to continue to learn it. Taking care of yourself first is not selfish in any way. It might feel selfish because you have a partner, you have kids, or you have responsibilities at work, or you're a community organizer, you got to go do this, whatever. Take care of yourself first, whether that is, hey, I'm gonna do yoga today. Yoga was one thing that helped me with fibroids, right? Like changing what I ate helped me with fibroids. There's different things. Talking to other women who have fibroids, as scary as that feels, just having your vulnerability be your strength, right? And just sharing your story and talking to other people and having platforms like this and coming together, anyone is welcome to reach out to me and talk about it because I know what it feels like, right? So that's my main takeaway. And to anyone who's going through things right now and, you just had a huge blood clot come out in the toilet or the shower, I've been there. I know exactly what that's like. Please continue to advocate for yourself. whether that means people are going to misunderstand you. And those people might be doctors, they might be friends, they might be family, they might be pressuring you to get married and have kids, or they might be pressuring you to have a hysterectomy or any type of procedure you are not comfortable with. You are your own best advocate. And I cannot stress that enough. And that is one thing that I would say to whoever is in the thick of it and you're looking at God, ask God for the strength, ask him for the courage, because you will make it through even when it doesn't feel like, trust me, there were so many days where I did not think I was going to just make it through, especially when that emotional, mental weighs on you heavily. And you will find through your journey, you will find some relief, whatever relief looks like for you, you will get there, and you have to believe in yourself and continue to take care of yourself and advocate for yourself. Those are the two main things I want to leave all of you with today.
And you're absolutely right. You do have to take care of yourself, and you might have a partner, a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. You might have kids, you have a job, you have all those responsibilities, but you're only as good as you can be if you're taking care of yourself. Tiara, thank you so much for sharing your time tonight, sharing your story, sharing your journey, talking out loud about it, inspiring those who have joined us tonight. It is so appreciated. Tori, I'm going to ask you the same thing. I'm looking for some gems. I know you'll drop them, but what is it that you want to tell people who are in the thick of it? They're at the table, their enemies are all around them, and they are there with God. What do you want to tell people to focus on, to think about, to journal, to say, so that they can get out of their own mind and out of that darkness?
I just want to remind you that when you said you were angry with God most, the first thing that came to mind is to allow me to remind you, sis, that God's feelings are not getting hurt. He's a big boy. He can take it. So if you're angry, if you're mad, then go ahead and express that. He already knows it's there anyway, but he wants you to bring that heavy burden and lay it there so that he can give you wisdom, strength. Your weakness is actually a magnet for the magnitude and for the magnanimous way that God can show up in your life. He shows up so big when we are able to express to him how weak we are. If you are in the valley and if you are in the middle of every enemy, that enemy of depression, that enemy of anxiety, that enemy of fear, remember God works best at preparing tables when your enemies are present. So stop asking your enemies to go away. Stop praying that away. Stop wanting everything to be perfect, because he can't prepare a table before you if there are no enemies in your midst. See your enemies as the motivation for why God is going to show up so big and so strong in your situation. I wish I can tell you that it's going to happen one way or the other, that you're going to do this and it's going to work, or you're going to do that and it's going to work. I can't tell you how he's going to work it out. As a matter of fact, it's not my business to know. But I said before that if it has not yet come to good, then that means that the work is not finished. Let him have his finished work in your life, so that at the end of this, not only will you see good, but you will see peace, and you will also be walking so divinely in your purpose.
So good, so good, so good. Okay, it's 8:06. I did very well on time. Anyone who's been to these before knows that I struggle with running long, but we are doing great on time. I just want to remind everyone, and you can see it in the chat right now, of everyone's social media. And I really encourage you to follow the social media, because you see that Tori's giving away gems here for free tonight. She gives them away on her social media. Follow her, follow Dr. Duke. She was not able to join us tonight because she is a doctor. She's very busy, and she had a patient who ran late. So she wasn't able to make it. Follow her though, because I followed her recently and she does have a lot to offer. She focuses again on fertility, and she offers a lot of information regarding that aspect on her social media. Of course, follow the White Dress Project. They have so much going on this month of July for Fibroid Awareness Month. I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Tanika to kind of go through the calendar of events for the remainder of the month, and to thank them both for having me again for this discussion. I so enjoy being here. The insight, the motivation, the inspiration, it is just priceless. So I'll turn it over to you two.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Tanika, you can go. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Tiara. Sorry.
And Kim, you're going to make me cry. But
I
I totally
know.
understand where you're coming from, girl, because like I said, if we had this when we were in it, just the support and the reminders that you're not alone, you're not isolated, there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. You are good, and give yourself grace. Girl, I feel you. But you're going to make me cry. So you need to take it away.
I just wanted to say thank you. This has really been a, I don't know, freeing for me, because Tori, like everything that you said, Tiara, everything that you said, I felt it like in my soul. You know, this whole idea of having and grieving an expectation, you know, living in a reality that you didn't plan. You know, your reality does not align with what your plans are. And, you know, I just feel like I'm grieving so much, so much. So this was definitely freeing for me. And I hope that everybody who's in attendance, it was as freeing for them and as empowering for them too. And, you know, what you said about regardless of where you are, whether you find yourself in darkness, constant darkness, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So no matter what situation you find yourself in, no matter what struggles you're going through, troubles don't last forever. And there's a scripture that I always hold on to where it says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. You know, so I'm just holding on to that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. And I just want us to continue these conversations because they're so important. Mental health is so important. Addressing your mental health is so important. It's as important as addressing your physical health. They go hand in hand. So thank you so much for the gems. Thank you so much for your wisdom. I truly appreciate all of you. So thank you.
I don't know what to say. I really honestly don't know what to say. Because every time we have one of these, every time, and Kim is the sole driver of putting these together. She's a director of partnerships for the White Dress Project. And every time we have one of these, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, what are we doing next time? And, you know, so tonight I was just joining like a participant. And because we do these often, you know, we've heard patient stories and we know the treatment options and we've heard what doctors have to say. But when I think about, Tori, you sharing just like how we can be encouraged just as a woman, just how to get through life and the journey. And Tiara, you speaking so candidly just about your journey and how you've gotten through it, and just being a resource and being so encouraging to other women. Like every time I say these things can't get better, I'm like, here we go. Here we go with it getting better. So I just am grateful for both of you tonight, because this is why we do this work. This is why we text at midnight. This is why, you know, we're like, what else can we do? How can we get Tori? How can we get Adriana? How can we, who else can tell their story? Because we know this is so needed. One of the things I always say about our board is that our board is made up of people who live this life. Like, this is not foreign to any of us. So when we think of programming, we think of ways that will help women, but what would we want to see? What do we need? How do we get through this journey. So we look at it from that lens. Tori, I don't know what else to say about you. You are just a godsend. You are just so gifted. People in the chat were talking about recorded affirmations. We need a podcast. We need a book. We need all the things, all the things. So if you haven't been encouraged in that vein today, Tori, to step outside of your practice, and I know it's another thing to do, but the world needs to continue to hear your voice. And Tiara, if you haven't thought about doing more work with us, please consider, because we need your voice as well. The important thing about patient advocacy is that if we don't have patients to tell their story, then we don't have patient advocacy. So we'd love to have you at the White Dress Project. I do want to mention Dr. Duke. She is a phenomenal doctor. She's on the West Coast, but if you've never heard of her, I think Nikki put her information in the chat. Phenomenal reproductive endocrinologist that can help you with all the issues of fertility. What else was this? Oh, I was supposed to talk about our calendar of events. Okay, so we have so many great events for the rest of this month. Let me put our calendar in here. Please support us. You see that we are out here doing good work, trying to educate our community, trying to be a supportive system for our community and our sisterhood that we've created here. So please share our stuff, tell a friend to tell a friend, and please join us for the rest of our events this month. One of the most important events is our event on July 15th, which is our Night in White event. And that is usually our annual gala. But obviously this year is going to be virtual, but next year we're excited to be in person. But it's still going to be a great time. It's going to be hosted by the actress Calais Stewart, who often talks about her egg freezing fertility journey, and just how you can be an advocate for yourself. So totally in line with what we talk about at the White Dress Project. Tonight, I just feel like the love and so much support. So if you're not following us, obviously, please follow us. Please follow all of our panelists and share our stuff. Tomorrow, Nikki will have all of these sound bites. Well, maybe Nikki's like, well, maybe not tomorrow. But this week or early next week, you will have the recording of this. You will have sound bites from this. So just want to encourage you to stay tuned to our channel. And Adriana, I can't think of anybody else who we would ask to do these things. Let me drop some tea. People reach out to us all the time. Hey, how can I do that? How can I be a part this way? And we all are looking like, ain't nobody coming to take Adriana's job, like no one. So we just appreciate you, sis, because we know that you have a daughter at home, and she's so beautiful. And you could be with your family, quite honestly, but you are committed to this work. Even though you've gone through your journey, you're still committed to ensuring that women get educated and that they feel supported. And we're just constantly grateful to you for that. One day we'll be able to pay you thousands of dollars as a speaker fee. But during this time, just take our gratitude and our love and our support that you offer us so much. Just know that we feel the same way about you, and we're so indebted to you. Nikki, thank you always for being our production, post-production, pre-production, all of it. We appreciate all that you do. And Nikki just had a myomectomy, and I know she doesn't mind me sharing this because she documented it so well. So please also, Nikki, put your contact in the chat so that people can see your journey through your myomectomy. And everybody, that's what it's all about. It's about sharing. It's about encouraging each other. So tell a friend to tell a friend. Have a great night.